Good evening, everyone. Good evening for those of you that are joining us from Armenia. Good afternoon for those of you that are joining us from the East Coast. I'd like to welcome you to our presentation today on the 44-day disaster, why it happened as it did, with our guest Tatul Hakobyan. I'm Professor Barlo Dermagrdician of the Armenian Studies program at Fresno State. I would like to thank our co-sponsors today, the Homen Fresno Sasun chapter, and also to give thanks to Dr. Vace Vasilian, who helped facilitate today's presentation. So I want to thank both of them for helping put on today's event. All of our events are on Zoom this semester. We are streaming also on YouTube. And after these programs, they are archived on YouTube, so you can always find that. As I mentioned to you earlier, after today's presentation, at the end of the presentation, you'll have the opportunity to be able to ask questions and to engage in a conversation through chat with our guest. Before we begin our formal part of our presentation, I'd like to discuss a little bit about our upcoming events. So I'm going to share a screen, and we're going to take a look at some of our upcoming events in the month of March, very quickly and very briefly. These are Armenian Studies program upcoming events in March and April of this month. This Thursday, coming up on March the 11th, we have a presentation by Dr. James Russell on a new book called Misak Medzarens, The Complete Lyric Poems. This will be at 7 p.m. Misak Medzarens was the great Armenian, Western Armenian poet of the early 20th century. And Dr. Russell has translated all of his works from Armenian to English with commentary and annotation. He will be discussing his book on Thursday, March the 11th. On Friday, March the 19th, Dr. Zovinar Derderian from the American University of Armenia will be speaking on the topic of migrants from Van and the transforming politics of representation in the Ottoman Empire. This is basically her dissertation work. It's a very interesting discussion of the migrants from Van and how they eventually gained a voice and agency in Turkey. And finally, in March also, we have a presentation by Dr. Khachik Muradian from the Library of Congress. It's his newly published work called The Resistance Network, The Armenian Genocide and Humanitarianism in Ottoman Syria, 1915 to 1918. This is a new book based on his dissertation, a very interesting presentation, Saturday, March the 27th at 10 o'clock in the morning. This also will be through Zoom, so make sure to go to our Armenian Studies program Facebook, or you can go to our webpage to get all the information. Finally, in April also, we have an event which is going to be the screening of the movie The Last Inhabitant, with director Jivan Avedisyan, who will be joining us from Armenia. We will have a discussion of the movie, The Last Inhabitant, on Friday, April the 16th at 5:30, but you'll be able to watch the movie in the week preceding. So we'll be sending out flyers and information on Facebook and through our normal communication channels. So again, if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can find all of our upcoming events, and you can also join us at our website to look at our upcoming events and to be able to learn more about the Armenian Studies program. So today we have the pleasure of having a guest, Tatul Hakobyan, who's going to be speaking about the 44-day disaster, why it happened as it did. He'll be discussing some of the major causes of the Artsakh War from September and November of 2020. He's been a very close observer of the political situation also in Armenia. He did follow the war as a CivilNet reporter and had been working for the last 12 years with CivilNet. He will also be discussing some of the current Armenian political scene, what's happening in Armenia as a result of the war politically. He is the author of 3 books: Karabakh Diary, Black and Green, Black and Green, Armenians and Turks, A View from Ararat, and Death Valley, the 44-Day Disaster. Mr. Hakobyan is a reporter based in Yerevan. He's also done work specializing in Armenian Turkish relations and is an expert on the Karabakh War. His articles have appeared regularly in the press. He is a graduate of Yerevan State University and the Georgian Institute of Public Affairs in Tbilisi. He is also the coordinator of the Research Institute, the Armenian Ani Research Institute, based in Armenia. So we're going to be listening today to Mr. Hakobyan. Following again his presentation, we'll have an opportunity to answer questions. And if at any time you would like to ask a question on the chat, in other words, during his presentation, if you have a question, go ahead and write that. And then at the end, I'll be reviewing all of his questions and then be asking the questions as well. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Tatul Hakobyan, joining us from Armenia. Thank you, Tatul, for joining us.
Thank you, Barlo. Thank you, Professor. And thank you for this opportunity. Can I start now?
Yes, please, go ahead. You're ready to start.
Yeah. First of all, again, thank you for this opportunity. Armenia and Azerbaijan had 5 wars. First war between Armenians and Azerbaijanis happened back in in the first years of 20th century, when Armenians and Azerbaijanis at that time, Tatars or Caucasian Turks, when Transcaucasia were part of Romanov-Russian Empire. Then the second time, Armenians and Azerbaijanis fought when they had two very short time when there was a Republic of Armenia and Republic of Azerbaijan from 1980 to 1920s. At that time, we fought because of several disputed territories, namely Karabakh, Nakhichevan, Zangezur, and also Kazakh region, which is now partly in Armenia and partly in Azerbaijan. Then in 1920s, when Armenia and Azerbaijan became part of the Soviet Union, Stalin and the Kremlin persons decided to form Nagorno-Karabakh Oblast and put it inside Azerbaijan. And for 70 years, there is some kind of, coexistence between Armenians and Azeris. It was a forced coexistence, but again, it was a coexistence. In 1988, when Armenians felt that there were last days of the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union were in agony, we Armenians started demonstrations claiming Nagorno-Karabakh, and we wanted at that time Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, 4,000 square kilometers, that territory, to unite with Soviet Armenia. Then the Soviet Union collapsed, and in 1991, Armenia and Azerbaijan started a war, which lasted about 1,000 days or 2.5 years. That war was disastrous, catastrophic for Azerbaijan. They lost not only the control of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, populated mainly by Armenians. About 80% at that time, 80% were Armenians and 20% of Azerbaijanis. So Baku lost not only the full control of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, but also 7 adjacent territories around Nagorno-Karabakh. And since 1994, when with the support of Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh signed the agreement, we entered the situation we called not war and not peace. That situation continued since 2016, when Azerbaijan launched an offensive, started a war, and we journalists, experts, called it 4-day April War. Again, Russia brokered the ceasefire, and from 2016, it was obvious that Azerbaijan is trying to solve the Nagorno-Karabakh issue by force, using force. Actually, Azerbaijan has had 3 options. Option 1, to accept the status quo, which was not acceptable for Azerbaijan, because, as I mentioned, they lost not only Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous, the control of the Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region, oblast, but also 7 adjacent territories. Together, it was about 14% of the Soviet Azerbaijan territory, although the Azeri officials, using every opportunity, international conferences, international podiums, saying that Armenians occupied 20% of their territory. But if you want to know exactly, 14% of the territory were under the control of Armenian or Nagorno-Karabakh forces. So the status quo was not an option for Azerbaijan, because they were the losers. They lost the war. They lost the bitter war in 1991-1994 war. The second option for Azerbaijan were to continue negotiation process. Actually, the negotiation process started back in 1991, and the first mediation made by Russia, at that time Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Then in 1992, when Armenia and Azerbaijan became full members of the OSCE and other international organizations such as United Nations, the Minsk group or Minsk conference formed, and from that time there was a negotiation process between Armenian and Azerbaijanis, or among 3 parties, namely Yerevan, Stepanakert, and Baku. For the first time in 1997, the Minsk group presented proposals for this to solve the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Then again in December 1997, the next year 1998. So in every occasion when the OSCE Minsk group presented proposals, Armenia, Azerbaijan, or Nagorno-Karabakh rejected it. And so since 2007, there was no success in the negotiation process, although according to foreign diplomats involved in the negotiation process, for example, in 2001, the sides were so close to find the solution in Florida, in Key West, United States of America. From 2007, on the negotiation table were the document called Madrid Principles. So since 2016, there was no negotiation breakthrough. And in 2016, as I mentioned, Azerbaijan launched the offensive along the line of contact between Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh. At that time, the war, the hostilities continued for only for 4 days, and Russians mediated, and since 2016, it was obvious that Azerbaijan is preparing for a new war. And the third option for Azerbaijanis were the war option. Why negotiation process failed? I think for several reasons, but especially during Nikol Pashinyan time, the Armenians made several statements which was used for Azerbaijanis to say that it is useless to continue negotiation process. As you know, probably in 2019, Nikol Pashinyan in Stepanakert, he declared that Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Armenia. And also the Armenian diplomat did nothing to have a negotiation paper on the table to avoid a new war. So for Azerbaijanis, there was only one option left: to start a war, and they started the war in September, last September, which ended with a catastrophic, disastrous defeat for Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. Why Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh lost the war? There were several reasons. We lost this war because instead of facing reality, we lived with myths and wishful thinking. There were several myths in Armenian, among Armenians. For example, that we Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh have the strongest army in our region, that Azer's army is very weak, that even if Azerbaijan started a war, we can win a war, we can win new territories. Even some Armenians said that they are ready to drink a tea in Baku, or to occupy territories between Araxes and Kur rivers. We lost the war because we were sure that time is on our side. But during this, since 1994, when Russians brokered the ceasefire, from that time, Azerbaijan, rebuilt his army with support of his friends like Turkey, Israel, Russia, other states. And in the first days of war, I mean this war, which ended with the defeat of Armenian army, we understood that there is a new reality in South Caucasus, the reality that the Azerbaijani army is strong enough to defeat Armenian and Karabakh armies. We lost the war because Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh were fighting not only against Azerbaijan, but against Turkey, or at least against Turkish attacking drones and Israeli attacking drones. Imagine 3 million Armenians, 3 million Armenia fighting against 10 million Azerbaijan, and Turkey, 80 million Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan. So there were no chance for Armenia to win this war. We had only one chance to lose the war. And unfortunately, we did nothing to avoid this disastrous war. We lost the war because, you know, we left alone. No one supported Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh. No one. Not Russia, although Russia is considered Armenia's strategic partner. As you know, there is a military base in Armenia, in Gyumri. As you may know, the Armenian-Turkish and Armenian-Iranian borders jointly protected by Armenian-Russian forces. So although Russia was and is Armenia's strategic partner, Russia's neutrality helped Azerbaijan and Turkey to win this war. So no one supported Armenia, no one. Not Russians, not Europeans, not Americans, not Iranians. And during the 44-day war, we again, probably the second time after 1920, when we lost territories in Kars, in Ani, as we called it, Western Armenia, although Kars and Ani were not part of Western Armenia. It was part of Eastern Armenia, or Russian Armenia. So there were, as I mentioned, there were several reasons why we lost the war. Also, we should take into consideration the fact that this government, Nikol Pashinyan government, was unable to organize and to behave as a government during the wartime. There is an accusation against Nikol Pashinyan, but I'm sure, as a person who, well, I'm ordinary journalist, but I'm sure I'm following the Nagorno-Karabakh event since a very long time, since 1988, and as an expert, I'm sure that we had no chance to win this war, even if not in power Nikol Pashinyan. Just we had no chance to win this disastrous this war, because, as I mentioned, Azerbaijan and Turkey together were much more stronger than Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. Now the situation in Armenia is quite complicated after this catastrophic defeat. There is a demonstration, a street demonstration in Armenia claiming that Nikol Pashinyan and his team should resign. What will happen in coming days, coming weeks, coming months? It is very difficult to predict what will happen in Armenia, but it is obvious that Nikol Pashinyan, who were elected in a democratic way, gaining more than 70% of the vote, he and his ruling party every day is losing and losing popularity. I think this is a right place to stop and to have and to open Q&A. As I said, I can talk very, very long. I'm an author of the Karabakh Diary, a 500-page book, but I'm not going to tell every aspect of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict or every aspect of the current situation, and I would like to open Q&A session. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Hakobyan. So if you have questions, please go ahead and write them in the chat area. I already have some questions. We're going to have a discussion. Really, it's really two types of areas, or two areas. One was the war of September to November of 2020 and the causes, and we can ask questions about that. And the other is about the current political situation. And I'm going to just start off by asking you a question, because you mentioned that, in a sense, Armenia and Karabakh, Artsakh knew that they could not win a war. Why do you feel that since 1988, no previous, well, really since the war ended in the ceasefire in 1994, why no previous Armenian administration either couldn't successfully negotiate a peace? Did they want to? So we had Kocharyan and then Sarkisyan. Why couldn't they successfully do that, negotiate a peace, a permanent peace?
You know, although Azerbaijan was the loser in 1991-1994 war, Azerbaijan, during the negotiation process, they wanted everything or nothing. Everything or nothing. You know, they were the losers, but they behaved as a victorious part of the conflict. That is why there was no success. I would like to remind that at least one Armenian administration, Levon Ter-Petrosyan administration, tried his best to find a solution. But what happened in 1997, 1998, now I can describe the events as a military coup d'etat. Although in Armenia's historiography, just the resignation of Levon Ter-Petrosyan, but that was the coup d'etat, military coup d'etat, and Vazgen Sargsyan, Serge Sargsyan, Robert Kocharyan, Samvel Babayan, they together ousted the first president of Armenia. So at least Levon Ter-Petrosyan tried his best. Moreover, he tried to persuade the Armenians in Armenia, in Artsakh, and in diaspora that now, after the war, although we were the winners, we should find a common language with Azeris. But no one wanted to listen him. They said that, at that time there were supporters of Levon Ter-Petrosyan, but his plan for Nagorno-Karabakh solution mainly rejected by Armenians in Armenia, in Artsakh, and especially in diaspora. Why? Now it's very popular to say that if we listen to Mr. Petrosyan, probably he was wise man, he was a smart man, and we should find the solution at that time and to avoid this disastrous war. I mean, 44-day war. But it's fait accompli. So after the Levon Ter-Petrosyan, we had new president Robert Kocharyan. I do believe, following and covering as a journalist the negotiation process, as a native Nagorno-Karabakh, he's not a, he thought that the time is on Armenia's side. And it is not necessary for Armenia to, to make, painful successions to Azerbaijan. But again, if we follow the statements of Mr. Kocharyan, we understand that he was ready to give back at least 6 territories to Azerbaijan. The territories we called liberated or occupied territories. Now, it doesn't matter because all that territories are now part of Azerbaijan. They during the 44-day war, they seized the old territories which were under the Armenian control since 1993-1994. But for Robert Kocharyan, the status of Nagorno-Karabakh was the core issue. At several occasions, the second president declared that Nagorno-Karabakh will never be part of independent Azerbaijan. This course continued by the third president, Serge Sargsyan, again native of Nagorno-Karabakh. For Armenians, the status of Nagorno-Karabakh were the core issue. I can't say that the Armenian successive governments did nothing to find a solution. Levon Ter-Petrosyan did his best. Robert Kocharyan tried to find a solution. Serge Sargsyan tried to find a solution, but as I mentioned, especially when Heydar Aliyev inherited the power to his son, Ilham Aliyev, the rhetoric of Azerbaijan, the war rhetoric, became part of Azerbaijan state propaganda. So there was no chance to find a solution. There was only a chance to find if we postpone the status of Nagorno-Karabakh for the future, as tried to do Levon Ter-Petrosyan.
So we have quite a few questions. So we're going to try to get through most of them, or as many as we can. So first question is here dealing with the future, which you said is difficult to predict. But Do you believe that this will be the last war between Artsakh and Azerbaijan? And what do you think are the prerequisites for a peaceful solution? So what is really needed? Is there a way to get to a peaceful solution?
Well, my understanding for the peaceful solution is the following. First of all, the occupation of Hadrut region, because Hadrut for centuries were Armenian, populated mainly by Armenians, and Hadrut now occupied by Azeri armed forces. So after the deoccupation of Hadrut, we can start a negotiation process, although Azerbaijani authorities say that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is in the past. I don't think that Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is in the past. You know, we had several zero-sum games dealing with Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. The first one were during Soviet times, when for 70 years Nagorno-Karabakh were part of Azerbaijan, although Armenians say that it was unacceptable for them. But that was a zero-sum game. And what happened? Armenians waited about 70 years, and when there were time came, good time to start to demonstration and claim Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenians started it in 1988. This was during the Soviet time, I called zero-sum game. The second zero-sum game was 1991-1994 war, when Armenians controlled not only Nagorno-Karabakh, but as I mentioned, 7 adjacent territories. This time was a zero-sum game, and the losers were Azerbaijanis. And what did Azerbaijanis? They waited for 26 years, and when the time came, they started the war and they won the war. Now we are in a situation, I'm sorry, now the 44-day war from September to November, we have another zero-sum game. I think with zero-sum games, we can't never find a solution for Nagorno-Karabakh. So we need a reasonable solution. We need a balanced and honest solution, which will be 50-50. Now the situation in 90-10, the Azerbaijanis are winners and Armenians are losers. My understanding is that if, well, I think that after the deoccupation of Hadrut, we can talk with Azeris, and we can suggest several options. For example, Nagorno-Karabakh de facto is independent and de jure is not part of Azerbaijan. This is the first option, although a little bit not understandable, yes, what I'm saying. De facto independent, de jure not part of Azerbaijan. But this is a solution. The second one, Nagorno-Karabakh, well, Yerevan and Baku together are, you know, in some way sign an agreement to, you know, to govern Nagorno-Karabakh. This is second solution. The third solution, Nagorno-Karabakh is becoming like a, like a territory which not belong to Azerbaijan, not Armenia, and ruled by Europeans, Americans, or probably Russians. Let us say Russians, because as you know, after the 44-day war, now Russians, I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. Now Russians send their peacekeeping forces. But we had another options. Now many Armenians think that we should wait for 5, for 10, for 20, for 50 years, for a century, to prepare for a new war, to start a war, and to win the war. So, but war is not an option, and history shows that yes, once Azerbaijanis were winners, once Armenians were winners, but the war is not an option.
So another question, actually, there were several questions dealing with the current political situation in Armenia. Nikol Pashinyan was the prime minister. Armenia lost the war during his reign, during his administration, but he has still maintained a certain level of popularity, and the opposition has not been able to have him resign. So the two questions probably are, number one, is there any opposition figure, one or two opposition figures you see as a possible to replace him, really legitimately replace him, meaning that they're credible? And how is Pashinyan able to keep power even though he's responsible meaning he's in power?
Well, first of all, Mr. Pashinyan is trying to persuade the Armenians that he is not guilty for losing the war. I do believe that he is guilty. He is responsible. He is the first responsible, because I would like to remind you when clashes took place in last summer in Tavush region, and Armenians were victorious part, and Nikol Pashinyan tried to persuade all Armenians that he is very talented person. He organized an event in Sardarabad, etc., etc. So I think that Nikol Pashinyan is responsible for our defeat. And my understanding as an ordinary Armenian, Nikol Pashinyan must resign. I remember the third or fourth day of war. I'm covering the war from Nagorno-Karabakh. I emailed my friends saying that Nikol should resign. That was the third or fourth day when, for me, it was an obvious that we are losing this war, and we are losing this war in a very bad manner. I understood at that time that there was an organization, and the guilty person is number one, Mr. Pashinyan. Why he has kind of some popularity? It's true, he has popularity, and according to last polls, more than 30% of Armenian population still consider him as the most acceptable person. But on the other hand, his popularity is increasing day by day. Every day he's losing his popularity. Who can replace Mr. Pashinyan? Well, the elections must tell us who should replace him. because only elections are the legitimate manner, legitimate way to form a new government. And it is very interesting, and it's amazing also that not an opposition and not this government wants to have new elections. Why? Mr. Pashinyan understands that during snap elections, he will not receive enough votes to form a government. The opposition understand that he can't win the elections. He can't win the elections, so they wanted to come power. Just they said, Mr. Pashinyan, you should resign, and we can replace you, which is absurd, of course. So we have a now situation in Armenia when the government and the opposition don't want to have snap elections. But I do believe that the only solution from this very difficult situation is snap elections as soon as possible.
Okay. Now the question goes back. There are several questions regarding the military defeat and to the reasons why the Armenians lost the war. And the question is two-part. I'm putting together several questions. So the first part is that in July of 2020, there was an outbreak of fighting in which the Armenians apparently won. So what changed between July and September? That's one part. Secondly, there was discussion that the Armenian, to what extent did Armenia's army get involved in Karabakh, in Artsakh? And was Nikol Pashinyan really interested in winning, or did he somehow intentionally not want to win the war? I mean, it's kind of several questions, but the first one was if they were ready in 2020 as July, why couldn't they in September?
Well, in July 2020, by the way, I also covered that incident, and we can't call it war because it was just in one segment of the Armenian-Azerbaijan state border, there were clashes between two armies. That was not a war. Although Armenian propaganda presented it as a victorious war, and we defeated Azerbaijan army, and we humiliated Mr. Ilham Aliyev. I think there was no war. This kind of wars, I mean wars in brackets, we had many times since 1994. There were several times when there was an escalation along the Karabakh-Azerbaijan contact and Armenian-Azerbaijani state border. So nothing to do with war. It was not a war. July incident it was an incident, just an incident. Is it possible that intentionally Nikol Pashinyan this war? I don't think so. I don't think so because I just can't think in this way that intentionally any Armenian prime minister or ordinary Armenian intentionally want to lose the war and to be humiliated. Just even I can't think about this kind of theories. How, at what extent Armenia's army involved in Nagorno-Karabakh? there is no Karabakh army. We have one army. It was an Armenian army or Republic of Armenia's army. And the Armenian army fully in a war during 44-day war in Nagorno-Karabakh. Why we lose the war? I mentioned when I started this conversation for several reasons. We lost the war because Armenians were fighting against Azerbaijan and against, in some way, against Turkey, and Armenia were not prepared for this war because this war is not look like a war in 1990s. This was the war of let's say it was a drone wars, and we lost this drone war. Armenia's army, the army of 1980s, were fighting with the 21st century Azerbaijan army. That's why we lost the war.
Okay. Now, just a follow-up question though, did the Armenians, several kinds of questions about the Iskander missiles, number one, were the Iskander missiles used or not? Number two, did the Armenians really have a strong position in Shushi before conceding, or was that already lost? And third, it's just also related to the military. Did Armenia really use all of its full military potential in the war?
Well, according to my information, which I received from high-ranking official, we used Iskander. We used 3 times during the last days of war, when everything was, you know, resolved. We used Iskander in the I think from 6th of November to 8th of November. So we used the Iskander when it was obvious that we lost the war. I think that was a strategic mistake, and I think we should use the Iskander in the first days of the war, hitting Johnny, you know, not only military positions, but also strategic objects like pipelines, like gas pipeline and other important, you know, important pipelines. The second question about the second part of
did Armenia use all of its reserves, and did they really put in their entire army into this effort?
Well, we used our army for 100%, but we didn't manage in a right way the mobilization resources, but we used our army, which is more than 50,000. We had in Karabakh about up to 40,000 strong army, 40,000. And the last part of the question was about the loss of Shushi. Yes, loss of Shushi. Mm-hmm. You know, Azeris occupied Hadrut, and they moved in 2 directions, one from Hadrut to Shushi, the second direction along the Hakkari River to Lachin corridor, it was obvious that the plan is to occupy Shushi, but we lose the Shushi not militarily. We lost Shushi because we unfortunately have stupid government, and there was a chance to keep Shushi inside Nagorno-Karabakh, probably with Azeri population, but it's much more acceptable to have Shushi with Azeri population than not to have Shushi and lose Shushi. I think it was a strategic mistake of Mr. Nikol Pashinyan, and he is number one responsible Shushi lost.
This question is regarding, again, back in Armenia, what's happening in Armenia. Do you believe that Mr. Pashinyan should resign before elections and have an interim government, or should he stay in power and just have the elections?
My personal understanding is that Nikol Pashinyan should resign the next day when he signed a trilateral agreement with Mr. Putin and Mr. Aliyev. But he didn't do it. Yes, he should resign. He should resign. Need a new interim government and to have new elections and to form a new, after elections, to form a new government. But Pashinyan understands that during the time when he resigns and before the elections, it was very dangerous, and probably he thinks that he can lose the power. That's why he don't want to resign.
Okay. Another question is, could the Armenian army have attacked the oil pipelines to in some way, or could have attacked further into Azerbaijan to help stop the war, to win the war? Would that have been possible for the army to have attacked the gas pipelines or oil pipelines?
I think yes. We should use the Iskander and other missiles to hit the pipeline in order also to have international, players response, players understanding that this war I understand that will have quite problematic situation when we hit the pipeline. But again, I do believe that in the first, second, third day, we should use the Iskander and other missiles to hit the pipeline. Otherwise, why we bought Iskander? Why?
So we haven't talked. Yeah, no, go ahead.
To lose Shushi, then to hit Shushi, to kill several dozens or several hundred Azeris. We paid several hundred millions to buy Iskander to kill dozens and several hundred Azerbaijanis. It is nonsense. We should use the Iskander in the first day of the war to hit the pipelines, yes, and other strategic objects deeper in Azerbaijan.
So we haven't talked directly about the Russian interest in this whole situation, Russia's role in this whole situation. So there are a couple of questions dealing with that. So two parts probably. Russia's overall role. Number one, do you agree that it serves Russia's interest to keep a weakened Pashinyan in power so that they can further their political goals? That's one question. And then did the war really give Russia the opportunity to become more involved with its peacekeepers? That is, by bringing the peacekeepers now, do they have more influence on Azerbaijan? So two parts, kind of Russia's overall influence.
I see. Yes, in this moment, we can say that Russians are still not supporting, but you know, Russia's role, I can describe as an honest one. They didn't interfere. They don't want to support Pashinyan, and they don't want to support opposition. How will this situation will continue? We don't know yet. But it is fact that Pashinyan is very weak one, and Russians can do anything they want. Since 1991, Armenia was dependent from Russia, militarily, politically, economically, even culturally, even mentally. Yes, but now we have a situation where is losing his sovereignty, and part of our sovereignty now belongs to Russia. I'm not saying that this is at this moment it is disastrous. Moreover, many Armenians think that Russians are savers, and Russia saved Armenia from full defeat. You know. The second part,
just about the
question,
peacekeepers coming in.
Since, look, since 2015, and especially after the April War, Russians clearly, demonstratively, you know, told Armenians that we must give back to Azerbaijan at least 5 adjacent regions of Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan. And they wanted their peacekeepers to protect the ceasefire between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. But now we can say that yes, their strategic goal is to send Caucasus region their Russian peacekeepers is a fact. But we can't say that during the wartime Russians behaved, you know, unhonest. I think, although I said that no one supported Armenia, but on the other hand, the only government, the only state who sell arms to Armenia during the wartime, it was Russia. So Russians tried to keep a balance between Armenia and between Azerbaijan. And the only country who sent armaments to Armenia.
So we're going to
even it was not enough, you know, to not to lose this war.
Okay, and we're going to just kind of conclude with two more brief questions, and then we'll stop. And then maybe if you want to give people details, maybe how they can contact you or something, we can do that as well. So you just mentioned at the beginning, and also just again, that Armenia was diplomatically isolated. In other words, it didn't have friends, let's call them, diplomatically. But why was there such a failure of Armenia's diplomacy in this last 30 years on this whole crisis, that they could not develop better friends, whether in Europe, whether through the United States or in any areas? Why are they not able to make better ties? Why is our diplomacy so bad?
I don't think that our diplomacy was bad and is bad. The problem is that the United States, the European countries, our close friend Russia, our neighboring Iran, and all the states, all the countries in the world clearly said that Armenia should withdraw from adjacent 5 regions of Nagorno-Karabakh. But we didn't listen to them, and that's why we hadn't friend in this world, you know. Americans, Russians, Europeans, Iranians, they told us that you should leave these territories, but we behaved as nothing happened, that these territories were historic Armenians, we should keep the territories, this is historically part of Armenia, etc., etc. So we should understand that in this question, in this issue, we hadn't friends. That's and no one when Azerbaijan started the war, no country blamed Azerbaijan, because internationally the territories were belonged to Azerbaijan. And I can say that because of diplomacy, we had bad diplomacy, we had bad diplomats. The mistake is not in diplomacy. The mistake was that we had an infantile, maximalism, and we thought that we can keep all the territories and to keep that territories eventually. That's why we lost everything.
Well, I think we're going to conclude there, because it's been a very good discussion. There's more questions, of course. As you said, we could probably go on longer, but I think I want to thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. And if people want to contact you, is there a way to do that? Is there email you want to give them, or is it just some way to follow you or connect with you?
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you for all participants. 2 things. First one, April 3. In coming weeks, I'm visiting to Fresno, and I will stay in Fresno 1 day. I'm coming to have a lecture with the Armenian community and to present my new books. And the second one, the students can find me in Facebook, and if they want contact me, I can send my email to them, and later try to be helpful when we talk about Nagorno-Karabakh issue, Armenian-Turkish relations, and Armenian foreign and domestic politics.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next week at our next event on Thursday, March the 11th. Thank you, Tatul, for joining us from Armenia and this very interesting presentation.